Lore of the Old World, Armies of Legends, Chapter 3, Dark Elves. From the chill land of Naggaroth, the black-hearted Dark Elf legions come. Bleak-eyed warriors march to battle alongside cruel knights, merciless sorcerers, and savage monsters. Dark Elf soldiers stand amongst the elite of the Warhammer world. They are ruthless killers, and masters of all the many ways of death, who see the world as both prey and prize. They take what they want from whomever they please, leaving nothing but ravaged bodies and ruined cities in their wake. Dreadlords are the so-called noble-born rulers of Naggaroth. Whilst some of these aristocrats are little more than sycophantic schemers desperately clinging to whatever power they can hold on to, others are feared tactical commanders who have commanded the Dark Elf legions across countless battlefields. Dark Elf generals seldom inspire their warriors with heroic speeches or displays of valor, preferring to rule through fear, intimidation, and torture, the path most of them walked in order to reach the lofty heights of Dark Elf high society. When they take to the field themselves, there are few who have crossed blades with these corrupt nobles and lived more than mere moments, for their martial skill and savage cruelty has been honed over many centuries of battle and bloodshed. Unlike the mages of Ulthuan, the sorceresses of Naggaroth care not for the dangers of meddling with the darker winds of magic, for the pursuit of power knows no bounds within Dark Elf society. Hidden within their great fortresses, the sorceresses compete with one another in an effort to amass strength and influence, constantly pushing the boundaries of safety and sanity through bloody sacrifices and infernal rituals in the pursuit of power. The sorceresses of the Dark Coven march to war at the behest of the ruling elite of Naggaroth, but not without considerable payment, be that prisoners of war to sacrifice upon dark altars, or hefty sums of treasure to further their own nefarious machinations. The Beastmasters of Clar Carond and Carond Car use a savage combination of torment and cruelty to enforce their will upon their chargers. It matters not what the creature is, be it a monstrous hydra, a savage manticore, or even a mighty dragon. The Beastmasters will bring the creature to heel. When the Dark Elves take to the battlefield, the Beastmasters drive their charges towards the enemy with barbed lashes and pointed blades, goading the poor beasts into a mindless frenzy of gnashing teeth and slicing claws. Thanks to the callous treatment of their charges, the Dark Elves' monstrous menageries are in constant need of replenishment, forcing the Beastmasters to regularly venture into the wilds of Naggaroth in search of new beasts to subjugate. Death Hags are the warrior priestesses of the Witch Elves, and the guardians of the murder god's mysteries. It is they who mix the heady potions that drive the Witch Elves into their infamous battle frenzy, sending themselves and their sisters into a state of total lust for blood and death. They also possess an intimate knowledge of lethal poisons and potent toxins, second only to the assassins of Cain themselves, with which they craft fast-acting concoctions to coat the blades of their followers. Along with their alchemical practices, Death Hags evoke the secret names of their god to befuddle their foes and fill their minds with a madness that consumes all but the strongest of foes. Masters of a subtle and murderous magic, trained from infancy to be the chosen warriors of Cain, these masterful killers move swiftly and silently about the battlefield, striking at their target with weapons laced with some of the deadliest toxins to be found, leaving enemy commanders and high-ranking officials twitching in agony as the fast-acting poison ravages their nervous system and vital organs. Even the serried ranks of Dark Elf City Guard can be unaware that an assassin of Cain stalks amongst them, until they reveal themselves, surging past their shields to pounce upon their target with paired swords or pointed throwing daggers. The horses of the Dark Elves are treated no differently to many other beasts in the armies of Naggaroth, making them just as foul-tempered and spiteful as any other creature. That being said, the midnight black steeds are as swift as any horse to be found on Ulthuan, and allow dark riders to scout ahead of the Dark Elf armies and terrorize those who lie in their path. Cold Ones are large, single-minded reptiles dwelling in subterranean tunnels beneath Hag Grief, hunting whatever prey is foolish enough to enter their domain. Though it takes a skilled hand to break them, once they have been subdued they serve as mounts for the Dark Elves' most elite knights. In the northernmost peaks of the Iron Mountains, dark Pegasus make their nests. It is from these lofty eyries that the Dark Elves steal juvenile mounts to serve as steeds for the sorceresses of the Dark Coven. Regiments of Dark Elves armed with sharp swords and heavy-bladed spears are made up of warriors, both male and female, drawn from the same city, and often the same extended family. The role of these warriors is to defend against enemy counterattacks threatening the flanks of other formations, and to protect the army's war machines and missile troops. Armed with their signature magazine-fed crossbows, repeater crossbowmen take up position at the rear of the Dark Elf armies, dealing death from afar. Though they prefer to avoid the cut and thrust of a melee, they are no less cruel than the rest of their kin, often foregoing shots that would slay their targets, in favour of inflicting debilitating wounds. Those who live along the coastlines of the Old World have learned to fear the Black Ark Corsairs, for these infamous raiders plunder and pillage with no mercy. Though it is a hard and dangerous life that they lead, serving aboard a Black Ark can see both captain and crew propelled towards fame and fortune, for although their voyages can last for years, when they return to Naggaroth they do so laden with plunder. Trained to show no mercy and kill without thought, the Black Guard are the finest and most disciplined warriors in all of Naggaroth, each of whom is willing to shed a sea of blood in the name of their ruler. Though the risk of serving at the right hand of their cantankerous lord is great, for the Dread King will often display his frustrations in a most violent fashion, those who serve him with loyalty and devotion are richly rewarded. Harganeth is the spiritual centre of Cain's worship, with many dedicated shrines to the murder god. It is here that the executioners learn the bloody craft of execution, becoming masters of dealing death with a single stroke of their blades. These pitiless killers are not like the wild and frenzied butchers that many Dark Elves become on the battlefield. Instead, they are cold-blooded professionals who take pride in dispatching their foes with the minimum effort. Just as famous as the executioners themselves are the great blades that they wield, crafted by their own hands in order to ensure that each weapon is perfectly suited to the one who carries it. Dark Elf Shades are outcast warriors, once belonging to the ruling families of Clar Corond, but since being betrayed and exiled by their kin, they now wander the harsh wilderness of the Black Spine Mountains. Here they move as silently as ghosts, slipping through petrified forests and razor-sharp boulder fields without leaving a trace. Witch Elves live only to serve Cain's malevolent demands for bloody sacrifice. Before battle they consume the blood of sacrificed prisoners laced with all manner of intoxicating herbs, driving them into a religious frenzy that can only be sated by an orgy of slaughter and death. There are countless gladiatorial arenas throughout Naggaroth, ranging from small pits to grand stadia, but there is one thing common to all: the presence of the Sisters of Slaughter. These talented gladiators fight with an intuitive and acrobatic combat style honed over centuries. In battle, these lithe and dexterous fighters vault over shield walls and scatter enemy formations with cracks of their barbed lashes. Roosting atop the tallest spires of Carond Car, these winged hunters delight in the torment of their prey on the battlefield. Harpies descend from the heavens like frenzied birds of prey, slicing at their foes' eyes and faces with their dagger-like talons, only finishing their victims off once the delight of their torment has finally lost its charm. The skill of the Cold One knights and the viciousness of their mounts sets them above the cavalry of lesser races. They are often found at the forefront of the attack, smashing into the enemy's most deadly regiments, but it is a daring Dark Elf who purchases a Cold One to ride, for the lizards savagely attack all who come near them, recognizing warm-blooded creatures by their smell. This is dangerous in itself, and no few strutting nobles have been savaged by their own mounts, much to the amusement of their rivals. In the time when demons besieged Ulthuan, the Dark Riders were the ever-vigilant sentinels that kept watch for signs of invasion and carried words of the demons' movements. Ever since the Civil War that tore Ulthuan in two, these cloaked riders have become heralds of woe, ranging ahead of the Dark Elves, sowing terror and disorder as the armies of the Dread King approach. In battle, Dark Riders skirt the edge of the fight in order to attack the flanks of their enemy rather than engage head-on, chasing down exposed war machines and cutting off supply lines in order to disrupt their enemy. Cursed by the Dread King long ago, the Doomfire Warlocks have since teetered between the mortal world and the realm of chaos. Whilst many Dark Elves fear the grip of chaos, the Doomfire Warlocks feel the lure of dark powers far more keenly, knowing full well that their fate is to be claimed by the ruinous powers. In an effort to fend off their inevitable demise, Doomfire Warlocks take to the battlefield to find worthy souls to offer up as a sacrifice in their place. The mightier and purer the soul, the more time it grants them. Yet no matter how many souls they offer up in their place, their damnation cannot be averted. The Cauldrons of Blood are gruesome altars that are rumoured to be divine gifts from Cain himself, a reward for the Witch Elves' single-minded devotion to his cause, or so the hag sorceress Morathi claims. Though they are usually kept deep within the chambers of Cain's great temples, they will occasionally be brought forth to accompany the worshippers of the god of murder onto the battlefield, where the accursed artifact can be supplied with a near-constant stream of fresh sacrifices. The seemingly bottomless brass cauldrons greedily drink the vast quantities of sacrificial blood that are poured into them, empowering the followers of Cain with renewed strength and vitality until there is no blood left to spill. Beastmasters race about the battlefield aboard swift chariots, seeking out monsters amongst the enemy ranks upon which they might turn their wicked ravager harpoons. But death is not their objective. Instead, the crews of Scourge Runner chariots will seek to subdue and capture the war beasts of the foe before hauling them back to the gladiatorial pits of Naggaroth. Cold One chariots are occasionally given as gifts to those knights who have pleased the Dread King with their devotion to him and their prowess in battle. To possess such a vehicle is a symbol of great prestige, ranked amongst the highest stations of battle, even though the Cold One's erratic behaviour can often bring the chariot to a jarring halt at the worst moments. Long ago, each blood-rack Medusa was a sorceress of Grond, who used her magic and blood-feasting rituals to make herself so beautiful her visage rivalled that of the gods. In doing so, these sorceresses earned the attention of Astarte, the goddess of pleasure, who was outraged that mortals would dare to compete with her beauty. In her rage she caged the upstart mortals within pain-racked serpentine bodies, and reduced their minds to those of ferocious beasts. So great is their suffering, those around them feel every ounce of anguish the poor beasts endure, provoking a feeling of great unease in most, but striking pure ecstasy within the corrupt hearts of the Dark Elves. Black dragons soar through the air upon great leathery wings, sowing death wherever their vast shadow passes. Rather than spewing roaring flame from its massive jaws, black dragons expel noxious gas that withers the lungs of its victims and desiccates their flesh. Those fortunate enough to survive the choking fumes and land a blow upon the beast often find their blades turned aside by a thick armoured hide, impervious to all but the most potent weapons. Few linger long enough to test their steel against the dragon, however, for even the sight of such a beast is so terrifying that most warriors turn tail and flee for their lives. Dark Elves hold no creature in higher esteem than the Manticore, for they believe that the ferocious beast is one of the many incarnations of Cain. Daring beastmasters will journey deep into the chaos wastes and perilous mountains of Naggaroth in search of young manticores to sell at auction, as the wealthy will pay great sums of gold for the chance to own one for themselves. Though manticores can be tamed enough to accept a rider, they still remain feral at heart, occasionally ignoring the will of its master in favour of pursuing its own ends. But a Dark Elf will consider this a risk worth taking, considering the fear and respect that owning such a mount brings. Only the Dark Elves could look upon a beast as vicious and powerful as a hydra and deem it insufficient for the task of murder and destruction. Ever since the Dread King's beastmasters first tamed the creatures, they have continually been bred to increase the raw ferocity and power of successive generations. Thus, the war hydras of Naggaroth's armies are a far more daunting foe than those the Dark Elves first encountered many long centuries ago in the Anuli Mountains. When a hydra sets about the enemy, it does so without hesitation or thought, with some of its heads tearing a foe to shreds, as others try to swallow their prey whole or bathe its victims in burning flame. Not every blood-rack Medusa is goaded into battle atop a massive monolithic shrine. Some emerge willingly from their lairs, or are turned loose to pursue the scent of blood and war. But they are unreliable allies who pay no mind to strategy or battle plans, seeking only to share their own torment with their victims. The Beastmasters of Clar Carond covet the Charybdis more than any other creature, a prize beyond any treasure, for not only is the beast incredibly difficult to capture, requiring the aid of a sorceress to bait the creature to the ocean's surface, its destructive wrath is all but unmatched on the battlefield. With a crown of flailing tentacles powerful enough to drag a ship to the inky depths, and jaws strong enough to crack the hull of even the largest vessels, armoured warriors and gallant knights stand little chance of avoiding a painful, but mercifully sudden, death. Used at sea to clear the decks of enemy ships, and on land to scythe down ranks of enemy warriors, the Reaper Bolt Thrower deals death from afar. Through clever engineering, the oversized crossbow can either shoot a hail of smaller bolts to cut down infantry, or launch a single massive projectile with enough force to pierce a dragon's hide. The weapons and armour of the Dark Elves are as finely made as any elven artifact. Long, slender blades that slice effortlessly through the air, exquisitely embroidered banners, and finely wrought suits of armour are as commonplace within the ranks of the Druchii as they are amongst their most hated kin. What sets apart the weapons and war gear of the Dark Elves is the detail. Where the Elves of Ulthuan craft refined and elegant weapons and armour, the Druchii adorn their creations with jagged blades and wicked cutting edges, cruel weapons that cause grievous injury and searing pain to their victims. Like their High Elf kin, Dark Elves are skilled manipulators of the winds of magic. Yet, where the power available to the Elves of Ulthuan is limited by their cautious approach, Dark Elves know no such limit, weaving high and dark magic with reckless abandon.